The show must go on. There really is nothing like doing daily live news.
Nicole Dubé.
Nicole Dubé.
Is Nicole Dubé?
She is the face of Winnipeg at this point.
I may not be the best, but what I will bring is I'm gonna outwork anyone I know. Despite how much I love this job, are these hours allowing me to build the whole life I want? And it started to become apparent that the answer wasn't yes. I've always been someone who was okay jumping into the unknown and being okay if I trip and fall. I was rejected early on for an anchoring opportunity that I thought I had. This need to prove myself through constant hard work, even at the detriment of physical exhaustion. The thing I had to acknowledge was, where in my life was that mindset a disservice?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Tool for Eyes podcast, aka the #1 podcast in Winnipeg, where we document the rise and stardom of Winnipeg's talent and personalities. Have you ever wondered what it's like to be at the top of your game? Well, this episode is for you. Because today we sit down with Nicole Dubé, who's had an influential career on broadcasting and live TV for a large majority of her life. She was the host of the CTV Morning News Live anchor show every morning, waking up at 3 a.m. to do the morning show to make sure you got your news. And now she's transferred into a career of entrepreneurship, media training, and so much more. Today we dive into her journey, listen to some of the stories that she has working at CTV, and so much more. Turns out 83.4% of people listening to this episode are not subscribed. So if you gain any piece of value or maybe a laugh or two from this episode, I suggest you hit that subscribe button. It means the world to us and it continues to put the city on the map. And until next time, enjoy the episode. Can you believe that, Nicole?
I can't.
83.4%. That's like insane to me.
So that's how many listeners you have who aren't active subscribers.
I know. That's insane.
Sucks.
It's so easy.
I know. It's the red button.
quick.
Just hit the red button.
I don't think we need an introduction for this guest.
No,
Everyone needs an introduction. Everyone
not
needs...
Nicole Dubé. She is the face of Winnipeg at this point.
No.
Nicole, thank you so much for being here.
Archie, Robin, thank you so much for having me.
Of course. I know you have a very busy schedule and we're able to plan around it and we finally got you here.
Hey, you're the ones creating hours worth of content while being students, trying to make a living. I sit here in full humbled awe of what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot. That means a lot for coming from you. I want to bring up a post that you mentioned on your LinkedIn a couple days ago.
Yeah.
Because if I'm not wrong, it's been almost just over 365 days when you left CTV Morning Live.
Yes, it would have been this exact week 1 year ago where I would have been sitting in my living room like, oh my gosh, did I just walk away from a 20-year journalism career, 10 years at CTV News Winnipeg hosting the morning show, and is this my life now? And then also being like, you know what, I'm not going to think about that too much. I'm going to get some sleep. I'm going to decompress a little. It's been exactly a year since I made that big decision to really pivot away from the known life that I had built and dreamed about forever, and said it's time to make a change. Yeah, it was a big moment in my life for sure a year ago.
I guess the natural question then comes up is, was that all worth it?
What?
Was the 10 years that you spent as journalism, waking up 3 o'clock in the morning every day, alarm clock going off, and continually grinding just to chase this one dream, was it all worth it?
Oh, I like how you phrase that, Archdeep, because yes, the short answer is yes, but there's a long answer to that. So you're not wrong. I was with the morning show for a decade, first doing social media and contributing as a social media entertainment reporter, and then I went into the host role. Had kids in the mix of all that as well. But that whole CTV journey came on the heels of 10 years prior to that, doing journalism in all facets. So it really was a 20-year career by the time I stepped away from mainstream network news. And I can say, I would have said it a year ago, this has all been worth it, but I can say even now, today, with tremendous confidence, every minute of my experience in news was worth it. I loved that job. I loved my journalism career. I still do, and I still miss it.
How does it feel now that you're out of it? It's been a year. You've ventured into the world of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, that's a
How does
loaded
it feel?
question, Robin. Honestly, it feels good. Again, it was a very intentional choice. I was ready. I could feel change coming long before it even left and jumped off the proverbial cliff. I truly have so much peace in my heart for what it all was, and having left, I do not look back and second guess or question. I do look back and I do miss it profoundly. There really is nothing like doing daily live news. And it was the most gratifying job and profession I could have imagined and hoped for. But I'm doing such gratifying work now as I'm still in the midst of reinvention and exploring a whole bunch more curiosity of where I want my life to go, how I want it to look. And that is so exciting. The excitement for the possibilities of what I've created and how it can grow, the people I'm working with now and how they're being impacted, it's pretty darn cool. And again, do I have it all figured out? No, but I like that I'm in it. I like that I'm in a period of transformation and growth and challenge. Like it's challenging to launch something, to pursue something, to do it on your own terms.
Of course.
I'm sitting here looking back over the last 12 months, almost with a bit of whiplash, like, gosh, has it been 12 months? And at the same time, I feel like it's been 10 years, you know, like depending on what the experience is.
I want to unpack the decision of actually leaving, right? You had a whole, like, you were living your dream job, right? Waking up 3 in the morning, being the first person that people listen to for they're there to start their day. In fact, I did that when I was working as well. I would wake up at 5. I'm like, let me turn on the news and see Nicole just.
I honestly, like, by the time it was lights, camera, action, good morning, you know, thanks for joining us. I was in flow and loving it all. I will say there were so many layers to that choice. And I would actually admit that the first time I really did think, is this what I want to be doing? Would have been about 2 years before I left.
And what was that moment?
So there, you know, we were in the pandemic, and I always joke, if you weren't reevaluating your life choices in the pandemic, were you even pandemicking? And I've said that a million times now, so it's kind of an old joke and a cliche, but I very much just had a moment at home with my family, kind of questioning it all, and again, being on the front lines of the news about the pandemic, acutely aware of the history that was unfolding, the severity of the circumstances we were in, and knowing this is not going to be a switch is flipped and we're done. Hey, okay, scary show's off. No, this is we're in this for the long haul. I gathered enough information, and in media, your job is to read between the lines. And I'm like, okay, we're going to be kind of in a roller coaster. Restrictions lifted, restrictions resume, and I just really had to stop and ask. This is the most stress we've been under. I have a very young family. We're not getting sleep. This is just really, really difficult. And I know it was difficult for everyone, but we were, you know, we all were in the same storm, but we had different boats to weather it in. And for some reason, this pandemic situation just brought up maybe stuff that I was running from, or emotions I'd suppressed on my quest to be the greatest broadcaster I could have dreamed for myself, right? We all set goals at very young ages, and you're on that path. The blinders are on. This is where I'm going. And the pandemic not only made us stop in our lives and in our careers and do things differently, for me, it just made me stop. It was almost like I'm running, but I have these emotions that are trailing me. And then the pandemic was like, I hit a brick wall, and then all the emotions just came right in and was like, oh, you've been here this whole time?
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm ready for this.
Carrying you along with me.
Okay, so I had to kind of unpack a little bit of emotional baggage, which I can now say was this need to prove myself through constant hard work, even at the detriment of physical exhaustion. And so I really, the first big epiphany I had was, I am so exhausted. And every day when that alarm goes off, I'm asking myself, did I really sign up for this? Am I going to be waking up at 3 a.m. for perpetuity?
Yeah.
I don't know if I can physically wake up at this hour. And the older my kids were getting, and the more our lives got complex, plus the added stress of the pandemic really forced me to ask that question. And even if I didn't have the answer, sit with the awareness that I actually don't know if I am physically built to do another 2, 3, 4 decade of time waking up. Because at that point, as much as I had created a beautiful morning routine and a beautiful daytime structure, my kids start influencing in our that afternoon evening routine and the family life. And so we ended up getting to a point where I'm up later than I would like. And as hard as I would try to get to bed on time, knowing, oh my gosh, I was so tired today, I'm going to go to bed early tonight. Life happens. And I was near the end, I was lucky to be getting 5 hours of sleep at night, 5, 6 hours, which I know many people are happy with.
Yeah.
I just started to learn that I was struggling to cope. My memory felt scattered. The energy I had for my life outside of work was eroding. And I just had to get really honest with, are these hours, despite how much I love this job, are these hours allowing me to build the whole life I want? And it started to become apparent that the answer wasn't yes.
Would you almost say that your priorities shifted? Because young Nicole was willing to sign up for that job, willing to wake up at 3 a.m. and willing to do this, especially when you first got into the world of journalism. Your mindset was, I'm going to be the best and I'm going to go for it. Would you say that's true?
Here's what I can say, 'cause that is a great question. I became more aware of my values. I don't think I could ever not prioritize work and family. The demands of family became greater. They've always been a priority. Work, always a priority. Using my skills to the best of my abilities to do gratifying work and help people or tell stories. None of my priorities changed, but my values of how can I show up with these priorities or these pillars of what lights me up, how can I be more in alignment? I mean, I know that that's thrown around a lot these days too, but I really needed to put sleep first. I guess the easiest thing I could say is, and I don't know if this is the right word, but it's almost like I had to put my physical health first. But it wasn't that there was anything like overtly wrong. I wasn't ill. But I could tell that waking up at 3 a.m., like the energy needed, I was like extracting it from like my bones to just keep doing it at the level I wanted to do it at. So I really started to think, okay, well, what are my values? Got really clear on that. And what are my skills? That to me was very apparent. How can I match the things I love doing and still do something that lights me up if I'm not going to be the girl on the news? If I'm not, who am I if I'm not if I'm not that? Okay, what can I start doing? It took a long time to get the answers.
That's
You know, as natural high achievers, we attest our value to the output that we put out, right? For example,
Yeah.
like the podcast, we could have the best podcast, and it's like, who's the next guest? Who's the next guest? And it's always the next thing, where you don't really stop and think about, holy crap, like I've done 141 episodes in the past 2 years. Like I've probably lived off of 6 hours of sleep, and that really hits when you're at 12 o'clock at night and you're staring at
That
the
is
ceiling.
so much content. That is so much content.
compared to you. Come on.
Come on.
No, like,
Come on.
okay, but doing a daily news show with a whole team,
Yeah.
like there's a whole team of people. Of
course.
You know, you're a skeleton staff at best. You're really doing this solo, and the amount of hours in editing and like ideas and ideation
Yeah.
of it
Yeah.
all, it's not easy. I've had people reach out to me with what I'm doing now, saying, okay, I want to do a podcast. I'd love to really launch a podcast. And I said, okay, do you know that if it's going to be a weekly podcast, that's 52 episodes in a year.
100%.
I'm sure you're sitting on a dozen awesome ideas. That's not even a quarter through your year.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do after your dozen ideas?
Also-
And you have to constantly be creating. And even with the morning show, you're right. Every single day after the show would end, we'd have a meeting.
Yeah.
Where are the holes in our schedule? What are the stories we need to cover? Ooh, what new content do we need to do? But also, what do we plan ahead for? That you can never turn that off. I bet you sit up at night. Do you thinking like, what's next?
A lot of times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like at 12 at night, we'll get a text from a guest that we really want. It's like, oh shit, like we gotta,
Yeah.
we gotta start planning for
Totally.
the next interview. Like it's,
We get the rush.
I
we
can
get the
relate to that
rush.
so much, right? We'd have our week planned out, and then our chase producer's like, well, this guest just canceled, or
Yeah.
the worst is you show up at 4 a.m. and you've got everything prepped, and then you get that last minute cancellation, and you're like, what are we doing?
And the thing about that is the show still goes on. Right?
Yeah.
Regardless. Guest cancels, teleprompter's not working, something goes wrong.
Yes.
The show still goes on.
Yes.
Do you have a story from the times that you were maybe on CTV and even before that where things went wrong and
Oh
you
my
had to like
goodness.
figure it out on the spot?
All the time. I mean, that was par for the course. We'd call it having a clean show.
Okay.
Like it would wrap up. And
Everything's like-
everything was cute, and everything played, and everything out of our mouths made sense, and our throws and the questions, and
Can you think back to a moment?
oh my gosh,
Is there a compilation of Nicole just messing up online somewhere?
oh there is some. I remember once in an interview, doing an interview, and I don't know what it was, but it's early in the morning, and I'm interviewing kind of a panel,
Okay.
Yeah.
and I didn't know if we were throwing to commercial or to Terry Apostle. And I absolutely turned to thank you so much, this was great. And I turned to the camera, and I absolutely had a deer in headlights moment. So I'm like, and now we're going to, and I didn't know. And thank God for the director just pulled up the next person. And I was like, oh, hi, Terry. And, or it could have been a commercial, and they just like run the stinger and the music, and then we're breaking. And like your coworkers are ruthless. They'll laugh. They're laughing you off set. They're like, what just happened? I'm like, I don't know, glitch in the matrix.
Yeah.
Total brain fart. Yeah, and there's been times too where you're mid-show and life happens. A co-host or something that's supposed to be on set doesn't get back on time, or maybe they got sick, or they're coughing, or you get like it's live. Like the thing with live TV is there's no waiting.
Yeah.
You're back on air, and so having to just pivot to camera and start talking and saying something.
With a smile on your face, even if your day's...
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I would actually share with you, though, like my most embarrassing moment
Let's hear it.
ever, but it wasn't on TV. This is the crazy thing. I go 20 years with this never happening, and then it happened after I left. So basically, the headline, 300 people hear Nicole Dubé pee. I had to do a keynote speech, and I had a wireless microphone, but it was really sensitive, and it was a headset microphone, and I had a videographer, and we really had to finesse the headset so it wouldn't fall off my ear while I'm walking on stage. So once we got it on, we're like, we're not taking this off until you're done. And no problem. It had a wireless transmitter, and I've been around wireless microphones my whole life. They had a keynote, an introductory speaker who was going to answer some questions, and then the MC was going to introduce me.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, they're wrapping up. I'm going to go to the bathroom quickly, and then I'll be ready to be introduced. And my microphone was off, and I go to the washroom, and I open the door, and there's a woman right there. Nicole, your mic is on. Oh. And I'm like, no, it's off. And I look at it, and the lever, I don't know what happened. It was so sensitive. It was on. And I look at her, I'm like, well, like, what did people hear? Like, did they hear, like, hand washing or toilet flushing? Or, like, what did people hear? And she's like, well, some people laughed. And the videographer, he's not even looking at me because he thinks, like, I'm going to be so embarrassed.
Yeah.
And I look at him and I say, did 300 people just hear me pee? He's like, it's not a big deal. And I'm like, no. I actually, like, I'm embarrassed, but I need to figure out, what do I say?
Yeah.
Because I can't go on.
You can't just not address it.
Yes. And I don't want the audience to sit there thinking, well, does she know that we know that her mic was on and we heard everything? So I'm like, I need a line. What am I going to say? How do I roll with this? And then the MC tees it up perfectly. Introduces my bio and then says, but like many of you here, I feel like I know Nicole because I would wake up and have my first cup of coffee with her watching CTV Morning Live. So I'm like, okay. So she introduces me and I thank everyone. And I turn to the crowd and I say, well, you've had your cup of coffee with me, and now you've gone to the bathroom with me.
Let's go.
So we're family.
Let's go.
You could feel the relief. Like, oh,
100%.
thank God she's cool with this, because this would have been a long keynote if the whole time we're like, yeah, but we heard her and she doesn't know. So it truly, it was actually such a gift because when something like that happens and you own it, the crowd was they were just so empathetic and relieved that I was okay. And it's almost like, well, what worse can happen now? Like your worst nightmare happens. And you got to keep going. Like the show must go on. What you're there to do, you still have to do it, no matter what it looks like. And you'll survive. And I survived.
It's like an opportunity for the audience to kind of connect with you on a different level.
Yeah.
And and that's almost, I feel like that's the best way to open a presentation. It's whether, you're starting from a story or even being a little bit vulnerable. Is that what you would say is like the best way to open up a presentation?
Oh my goodness.
Just go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Just go to the bathroom.
Yeah, the only thing I could have done better would have been to walk on stage with a piece of toilet paper on my heel. Like, I think that would have been extra funny.
Yeah.
But that's so insightful, Arshdeep, because I now do executive presentation coaching. I do media training, and I do help speakers refine any of their keynotes or presentations that they have to work on. And I absolutely tell people, an audience can't resist a personal story or the human factor. And if you really can't even come up with like your own personal story as it relates to why you're there or a lesson that we can all learn from, you can use also borrowed experience, right? Something that someone else went through close to you or in your life that you learned something profound through. That borrowed experience can help, but we all have something that we can share, that personal story that I believe helps bypass that subconscious resistance to whatever it is you're trying to share, whatever idea it is you're wanting engagement on or uptake. When you share something human and real beyond just data and stats, which are great to reinforce, but if you can marry that together, you can really connect on a deeper level. And by the time you get to that call to action, you have a bit more buy-in because now you're a real person. You're not just a salesperson. You're not just, doing a podcast. You're a real person connecting and being vulnerable.
And I think that was one of the reasons why we also started the show, is thought that authenticity. And I mentioned it before we
Yeah.
started recording. We want to know the person who their authentic self are. Because especially in the world of social media, you can fake a lot of things. You can pretend to be something that you're actually not, but it's only when you get to see behind the curtain. What is that person
Yeah.
actually like? And this brings me to a question about media training.
Yeah.
What is media training, to be honest? So are you training? Yeah, honestly, the basic question, what is media training and what does that look like?
True traditional media training is, let's say you are a spokesperson or an official, or just through the nature of the work you're doing, you find yourself engaging with media,
Gotcha.
reporters, anchors, journalists, radiocasters, anything that falls under the umbrella of news media.
Gotcha.
Traditional media training would be, okay, you're a spokesperson, or maybe you're a politician, maybe you're a public figure. You're an exec, or your organization, again, through the nature of what your work is, it's public facing. You're going to find yourself on occasion doing an interview, or the news will call you up, hey, we need comment on this.
Gotcha.
Sometimes media training happens when there's a problem or a crisis, something's gone wrong, and all of a sudden you're getting phone calls from media.
And you have to
Other times it's really positive. You're in maybe a charity or not-for-profit, and you have a campaign and you want to make sure the public knows about it, or there's good news, or there's awareness that needs to be built. And you pitch the media, or you're reaching out to media to say, hey, I'd like to do an interview on this, or we're doing this, or we have a product or service, and we feel like it can help a tremendous amount of people. So media training would go over, okay, what can you expect when you're engaging with news media? How do you answer questions? What are your key messages? How do you maintain authenticity, but still recognize that you have seconds, really, to get a message out and enhance the chance that the quote or the key message or the statement that you're hoping is relayed is what is picked up.
Gotcha.
So it's just going into an interview with a bit more of a strategy, and not feeling like it's out of your control or that you're going to be blindsided.
Gotcha.
You really can feel empowered that you're in control, that this is a symbiotic relationship, and you win when I win, and I win when you win, and going into it with that strategy and a not a formula, but a few things that you can say that you know will land really well, that'll make you feel good. And if you feel good, the interview works well. So that's media training.
So then how do you train people to get their message across concisely when you have seconds to, make a statement? Like, for example, you're on news in the morning and you have a 2-minute segment for your podcast. Like, how am I supposed to tell a story of Two of Arise in 2 minutes?
Yes, so we're sitting here today and this is a long form interview.
Yeah.
You're giving me as much time as I want to chat. So I come into this knowing, okay, this is a long form interview. It's to tape and it'll broadcast later for replay, and people are going to likely listen to it. And maybe just the first chunk, maybe the whole thing, right? You listen to it in segments.
Of course.
When you're doing interview with media, first of all, you can ask anyone that reaches out, okay, is this a recorded, like pre-taped interview?
Yeah.
Is this going to be live? Is it just over the phone? Am I on location? Is anyone else with me? I always tell anyone, get as much information as you can about the opportunity or what's being asked. What's the focus? What's the angle? The more questions you can have answered long before the record button is hit, the better you can prepare to figure out, okay, what can I say when I truly have 8 to 15 seconds that will end up being quoted in the traditional news story. Right. So a traditional news story, if you ever, and I know that no one's watching their news with a stopwatch, but the average news story is about 1.5 minutes if it's a reporter story.
That's crazy.
If it's just being covered off by the anchor or the host, it can be as short as 45 seconds with one quote or one statement being shared. Print is different, radio is a little different, and now new media it's a wild, wild west, right? But if, let's say it is going to be, you're meeting with a reporter and they're doing a full story, and you will be somewhat of a focus or featured prominently. Figure out, okay, what is the story? What's the focus or angle? What is my involvement in the story? And this is where you're going to want to, if you're on your own, figure out, okay, what do I want to convey? If I have one 15-second soundbite or quote or statement, what would it be? So just take the time to figure out what sentence would you want to see written in quotations, in print or on digital media.
Yeah.
Or what statement would I want to hear back in a TV interview that I'd feel good about it? And then rehearsing how you could bridge to that.
Yeah.
You still have to answer the questions, but when you can go into it with at least one, maybe two, no more than three key messages is what I call them, or statements, or just the message you want to convey, it helps you go into it knowing you do have something to say. You're still going to listen to the question, you're still going to bridge, you're still going to deliver it, but there you go. Those are all my training secrets. You never have to hire me again. Get it here first.
Well, I think the reason we ask is, what was your media training like?
Yeah.
When you first started, the first time you were on live TV, what was that like?
What was my history?
Well, do you have the story of the first time you were on live TV? Like, what that was like?
Yes. It was kind of anticlimactic. I did stuff for a Rogers cable program in Kitchener, Waterloo, because I'm from Southern Ontario, and they have First Local, and it was like a local kind of news coverage. Was that even live, or was it live to tape? You know what? I can share for sure my very first time anchoring.
Okay.
Because that's more embarrassing. My first mainstream media job was Global Winnipeg.
Okay. Yeah.
Out of university, I went to Ryerson and I studied broadcast journalism. It's now TMU, and came to Winnipeg on an 8-month contract, which included backup anchoring. So I felt like I'd won the broadcast news lottery. I was like, I'm going to Winnipeg. I can't believe this opportunity, within a month out of school to get that. 8-month contract, perfect. I'm there for it. I had loved Winnipeg. I'd actually spent a summer in Winnipeg a few years before. And so I was excited to get back and hit the ground running. And I don't remember my first news story, because I think the first time I anchored, which would have been months later, was so traumatic that I probably forgot the stories I did. I should dig up. You're not wrong. I should dig up my very first news story. But
Great.
anchoring is going live.
Yeah.
And there's
The only
you're
one-
live. And I remember it was the weekend news, and a lovely mentor was helping me. Adrienne Pan, an incredible broadcaster. She's no longer with us, but she's done great work, and I have nothing but amazing things to say about her. But she was the one who trained me, and she was there that day, and she's like, "Okay, you're going to go live on the show tonight." And I had pretty much learned and trained and practiced everything under the sun, except how to end a newscast. No, you don't think about it. No one really tells you how you end it.
Yeah.
You just watch everyone and they just say goodbye.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us. Have a great show. Like, you don't think about it. So I've rehearsed the first block. I've figured out how to throw to weather. I've got my throw line for sports. I've written stuff. I'm ready to go. And the only thing I could say that I didn't really give a hot second thought to was, how am I signing off? So, and remember, this is also my first time anchoring a live broadcast. So I have an earpiece in, which is great. And it guides you the whole show. And the director counts you in and out of commercial. So the director will say, okay, 5 seconds, 3, 2, 1, cue. And then you start talking. And anytime there's sound or anytime there's a hard out, the countdown will start. So let's say there's a sound on tape.
That's nerve-wracking.
Yeah, like so you're
insane.
actively orating and and reading the teleprompter,
crazy.
and you're going to be saying it, and then you're going to get a count in your ear when there's a hard out or sound on tape, or like we're going to have issues with your audio and the audio coming up or whatnot. And I knew that for so many parts of the show, but we get to the end of the show, and yeah, the director's like, "Great, Nicole, this is great. All right, all you got to do is say thank you. See you tomorrow." I'm like, okay, I did it. Great. I didn't know I was going to get a countdown for the hard out of the show. Because there's nothing left on the script. There's no sound on tape. There's nothing. It's in the rundown, just goodbye. So I think all I have to say is goodbye, and it's just going to end.
Goodbye.
So what I want to say was, thank you for joining us. That's our show. We'll see you tomorrow. That's all I have to say.
Smooth.
3 sentences.
Smooth. Yeah. Easy. Bang.
So I'm looking at the camera and I say, that's our show for tomorrow. Thank you. And I realize I said that's our show for tomorrow.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye. That I like totally get this expression. And what's happening back home in Hamilton? Oh, my parents invited the whole neighborhood to watch their daughter do her very first newscast. And my grandma, who doesn't miss a thing, just turns in front of everyone and is like, did she just make a mistake? And my parents, God bless them, no, she didn't. That was great. That was great. I get off set mortified and I go to the makeup room and I cried. I just cried. I was like, I'm an idiot. I'm never going to be asked back. And it was.
Oh no.
It was like in the context of the pressure and the moment. I think I was 21.
Yeah.
When I did that, and I cried and.
Oh no.
Yeah, it was a moment, and so it makes you realize you need to know your beginning, your middle, and don't ever have a throwaway end. Know how you're going to end.
Wow.
That's
Lesson
an
learned.
insane story.
I mean, it is and it isn't. Like it. I just remember feeling like such a putz.
Yeah.
Oh.
You know, because you're trying to be pro.
Right.
You're trying to look the part. This is my big break. My boss is watching.
Everything's online. It's game 7.
Like I think I still get sweaty. Like my armpits right now are sweaty. I'm thinking about that.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, but hey, you got to start somewhere. And there's a great quote I read. If you're not willing to risk getting in the ring and being embarrassed, don't take advice from those who aren't.
Yeah.
Ooh. Yeah.
Because it's so true. If you're trying to achieve something bigger than yourself in the moment, you have to put yourself out there and risk embarrassment.
Yeah.
100%.
Put it online.
Otherwise, how are you going to learn? How do you improve?
Yeah.
You can read all the books in the world.
Yeah.
You can read about everyone's, million listener podcast. You have to start somewhere.
course.
You have to risk it not being great in order to get somewhere. So I guess maybe older, wiser Nicole can say that now, that I've always been someone who was okay jumping into the unknown and being okay if I trip and fall.
Yeah.
I think this is a perfect segment into the mindset of things. And did you always have this mindset going into things of, I'm okay with losing and taking a couple failures until I succeed?
No, did I? I mean, gosh, I don't know. I know. So my dad is someone who always loved trying new things. So I'm sure that that were off on me. He started like learning how to tap in his 50s, like tap dancing, just because he'd never done it.
Yeah.
And he thinks it's
Pretty
cool.
That's pretty cool.
And he's just like, yeah, I'm gonna go do it, and it makes him laugh. It's like I've never put on a pair of tap shoes or
Beautiful.
never pumped and not seen people laugh or smile. So my dad has absolutely been someone who, whether I realized it at the time or not, but now I can look back and say, yeah, he's someone who had no problem being a goofball, trying something new. And he was a professional musician on stages, like recorded CDs with his brother. And so there was always a bit of a comfort or normalization, I should say, about seeing someone on a stage with a microphone. I was around that to a degree, not to what I ended up going into, but And I also have played a lot of sports in my life. So sports, I think, really was where I honed in on a bit of a tougher mindset of feeling nervous when it's a big game. And I've played at high levels, I guess. Overcoming nerves and being okay not being the best.
Yeah.
Like I'm 5'6" in heels, okay? I played varsity volleyball from a university.
Yeah.
I was a walk-on and they just so happened to have room, but I had to try out and bust my ass every single year to just cling to that bench position that I rode with pride. And I've been okay not knowing I may not be the best, but what I will bring is I'm going to outwork anyone I know. I'm just going to outwork. And coming back to maybe what I was sharing earlier, in the pandemic, where I was like, oh, I'm carrying some stuff here and I don't know if it's serving me anymore. And part of that was the mindset I had to use growing up to realize that the broadcasting dream was just work hard. If you're not the tallest or the most athletic or the best, maybe I'm not the best writer or orator, maybe hard news doesn't come naturally to me. If I'm not the best at it, I'm just going to keep working and not give up. And that served me tremendously over the last 20 plus years. No question. The thing I had to acknowledge was where in my life was that mindset a disservice? Where could I soften?
Wow.
And where could I surrender a hell of a lot more? Because I was exhausted.
Yeah.
I was on this pace that was not sustainable, especially with not a lot of sleep.
Yeah.
So that was part of the stuff I had to kind of unpack and get a new shift of my mindset into I can achieve things and do things, and I don't have to push and struggle and hustle, the whole hustle culture mentality.
Yeah.
Part of me is like, is this just more of the same industrial perspective just to keep people plugged into the matrix? I don't know, right? Like at some point you have to realize where here's a good way of putting it. Not all seasons are seasons of creation. Where are you resting?
Yeah.
Where are you coming up with new ideas?
Oh yeah.
How are you taking rest? And I had never really realized that when you're always on output mode, things also, if you're constantly working hard, you are constantly welcoming hard work. But if you're working in flow with ease and joy, you are going to attract work that's in flow and ease and joy. And I did not know that until 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I think I have yet to reach that point in the sense where when you work so hard for something and you achieve it, how do you continue working for it? Like my biggest thing is like when I get my Lamborghini, am I going like is my life over? Like am I done? Like that's my whole reason.
Is it like a fear? Like if you're worried that
I'm just like what am I chasing now? Like what's next? And do you think maybe that was for you as well because your dream job was CTV News?
Yeah,
and you got it.
Yeah.
And now, because your whole life you worked towards it, and now you did it and you enjoyed it. But then what's next?
Yeah. So
the what's next moment is what I think a lot of people face as well, and which I'm scared to reach, to be honest. Honestly, never give me my Lamborghini.
Like,
just keep it.
No, go for that Lamborghini, but it's you need to want something beyond a materialistic reward.
Of course, 100%.
But you guys are in your 20s, like, right?
Yeah.
You're babies. And you're supposed to dream because that dream is such fuel.
Yeah.
It is such momentum. And I love all of my big, wild, audacious dreams. Because even if you fall halfway there, you're still ahead of where you are, right?
Exactly.
Yep.
And I look at my whole 20s and I say, thank God I was naive as fuck.
Yeah.
Because that naivete serves you.
Yeah.
At some point, though, you do have to have awareness. Maybe it's in your 30s. At some point, you have to take stock of, okay, I'm older and wiser. I have skills. I've got X more years under my belt. Okay, let's let's pull back and let's see where you're at.
Yeah.
Right? Like things always change. And I don't even know what the question was anymore. But
The
like
what's next moment.
yes. Okay. So I was rejected early on in my career for an anchoring opportunity that I thought I had. I was even told by a manager, yeah, you're next in line for this. And when the opportunity came around and I knew it was mine, and that same manager gave it to a colleague, I was gutted. And this is in my mid-20s, right? I'm just a few more years ahead of where you're at right now, and you're on this path, right? And you think you've got it all planned out, and then
Bang.
boom, you get gut punched. And I had to go out into the newsroom parking lot to cry in my car because I couldn't believe. And I asked myself, all the questions. Is this the path for me?
Yeah.
And asking myself, what is next? This is what I thought was going to be next. What is next? And I didn't know the answer to that question. And I don't necessarily know the answer to that question here and now today, this version of myself. But I trusted and always trust that in the case of, early 20s being rejected, that was a redirection. And it took a lot longer to get to my dream job, but it ended up being the host of a morning show on the competing #1 station.
Let's go.
Like, let's go, right? Let's go. But it took.
Watch me win. Watch me win.
Let's go, right? But it took rejection and like a reset and a growth. And did it take longer to reach the goal? Yeah. But would I trade what I learned in those years to have expedited the dream? No. I learned so much more and was better when the better opportunity came around than if it had come around any earlier. We can say all this in hindsight, right?
Of course, but at the time, it's the worst moment of your life.
At the time, I thought it was over. Yeah, I thought I got to move back to Ontario and I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to live in my parents' basement forever. Start a podcast in my mom's condo. No, I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. Podcast didn't exist.
I'm coming for you. I'm coming for you.
No.
That's what's gonna keep me up at night now. It's gonna
quote
Nicole
that.
just
Quote that.
that moment, bro. Every time, that's my alarm clock.
I am hello. I am now in the liminal space of nowhere, no one right now. Okay, so you guys are doing incredible work. I just given it to you on the chin there. Sorry about that.
Can I ask what the last day of CTV was like?
Oh,
It
it was insane. It was.
You also said it took 2 years to when you made the initial point to then.
Yes.
Why did it take 2 years?
Because I don't think I had the guts to do what you guys are doing right now. You just jumped in and said, "We'll figure it out." And I said it before the camera started rolling. I have tremendous respect for anyone who says, "I'm going to do something and I'm going to do it now." And I don't care who, what, where, when, and why. I know my dream. I know what I'm going to do. And you both have that. And I admire it. And I've listened to your podcast. And I can tell that if hardship or challenge comes your way, you're going to just push through because you know the dream is bigger than whatever challenge is in front of you.
Of course. Thank you.
So that is my attempt at salvation after.
She's good at this. No, she's good at this.
That was the biggest clout of my life I've ever gotten. That was like, wow.
You got to pull him down, and it's easy to bring him up. No,
She's good at media trained. Damn.
no, please don't. Please
got
no.
it.
I'm honored to be here. I would not. I really am.
All love.
And you're so gracious. I'm the asshole.
But no, it's a hard journey. Like taking it, even for us, we didn't jump in right away. It might seem like that, but it took 2 years,
thinking about
it and practicing and like sitting in our studio in the UMFM radio station, learning how to turn on the mics for the first episode.
But you did it.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of projects that never made it out.
Yeah.
Is what I think, right?
I love that you said that.
There was a lot.
part of my 2 years of what the heck is I didn't know what it was. And then I thought I had a great idea. I totally thought I had a great idea. Talked to people, shared it with people, and it was going to be like Instagram Live. It was basically going to be a podcast.
Yeah.
And it was going to be all about pivoting.
Yeah.
Because here I was, deeply exploring a potential pivot. So I wanted to learn from people who were in a challenging emotional or career, professional state and figured it out. I'm like, oh, this is great. The whole world is pivoting. Everyone's in pandemic and pivoting. Like, I'm going to do a whole thing there.
Yeah.
And then I realized I couldn't do that and still do the job I was doing. There was conflict of interest. So then I was just, okay, all right, well, I'm not going to do that. So what am I going to do now? And it just took a year plus of conversations with people, exploring their ideas, how you come up with all this, right? Like we've said that so many people in the pandemic started podcasts, and where are those podcasts now? Here you guys are at, 150 almost.
Yeah.
That is insanity. Number one in Winnipeg for what you're doing.
Oh, thanks.
Tremendous. But anyone can buy the equipment and launch an Instagram and say, okay, we have a podcast. Can you get to episode 52?
Yeah.
And then episode 100 and keep going. It is a grind. And I say that in all earnesty. For me, it took a full 2 years of conversations with people I respect. It took, brainstorming sessions. I finally did kind of have an aha moment where I realized media training could be like a foundational service, and I could have so many offshoots with it.
Yeah.
Because what I tell you I do versus the dream of what I have, it's pretty wild.
Of course. Are you willing to share what that dream is? Put it out in the world?
Manifest.
I'll put it out there. I want, it's multifaceted. And it was only recently I realized, like, I kind of feel like this is how my dad lived his life, and he's one of the happiest people I know. And it's that we can wear many hats and do many things. So there's no roadmap for how I want to achieve all the different things I want to do. And it doesn't have to make sense to anyone else but me if I feel it,
That's
right?
the perfect plan.
Yeah. So I'm proud to say I'm a keynote speaker, and I have a speaking agent, and that's something I'm working on right now. I am doing a little bit of TV segments again, which is lovely. And I'm doing my consulting practice of media training, executive presentation coaching. I'm helping other people pitch the media. I'm doing workshops. So on one hand, I'm using my skills to help people, and I'm also still using my skills in a way that is the most natural for me. And I just want to keep this growing as much as I can, and finding a way to scale in a way that makes sense, because I'm one person really. And just the whole business learning curve of it all, that's the hardest part. I'm a creative, right? I come from a broadcast journalism background. I've learned how disconnected I've been from how business works and how the real world works outside of a newsroom. And so the learning, the growth, just, if we're not learning and growing, are we living with the most vitality? I don't know. For me, I feel like I want to just keep growing on the ideas, building upon the ideas.
Beautiful.
Nicole, I know you do have to get out of here soon.
I know I could talk for forever. I'm so sorry.
But before we end off, we always like to ask the guests, is there anything that we haven't discussed today that you would have hoped that we would touch on? Like, if you were to walk away from the podcast, would you be like, oh, I wish Arshdeep asked me that question?
You have asked some straight to the heart questions. You're incredible at what you do. You really are. It's not easy. It's not easy doing something co-hosted either. Trust me. I've worked with a lot of co-hosts, and I'm the luckiest person to have had the best co-hosts.
I can say
but it's a bit of a dance, right? But you've done great. I actually feel like I just didn't answer your one question about what my last day at CTV was.
Let's end on that.
I mean, I put it on my Instagram. It really was 1,000 times more emotional than I thought it would be. I had allowed myself a few months prior to grieve a little bit of the end of the best chapter.
Yeah.
And grief for me was just acknowledging that there's some sadness here, as much as it's my choice that I'm going to leave. I love this job. I love the place I work, the people I worked with. And I'm sad that that's ending, knowing full well that my curiosity, the pull to do something new, I couldn't ignore anymore. But that last day, I spent a good 2 months every day knowing when, the end is near. Just really looking around the newsroom and like really appreciating my coworkers, even before they knew I was going to announce that I was leaving. So when the final day came, like I said, there was so much peace, but what I didn't realize, and I still don't even believe it, was just how sincere the people were in expressing their gratitude for my time there. I genuinely did not expect to feel so emotional from those who watched, the viewers, my colleagues. Like I feel like I cried for 3 straight hours. Yeah. And then we partied that night and I got really drunk.
That's where it ended off.
Beautiful.
It ended. It was a beautiful ending, and it is not lost on me that there are incredible broadcasters, and I have incredible colleagues who did not get the opportunity to walk away and say goodbye because of the nature of the industry. There are layoffs, and it is awful. It is there. I don't know if we're ever going to figure out how to properly handle laying people off in our world, or in the way corporate North America works. But for my friends and colleagues who didn't get to say goodbye, my heart breaks, because I wish everyone could have had the chance to end on their terms. And there's never a perfect time for an ending. So I knew I had to just put a date on the calendar and go for it and jump in.
Yeah.
And I'm just so grateful. I miss it. I miss it. And when I really sit and think, maybe I should have just stayed a little longer or whatever, I am reminded by myself and by my colleagues that what I miss really doesn't exist anymore. There's been so much evolution. There's been so much change.
Right.
So maybe my final thought is just that the only constant is change. And I'm here figuring things out, putting my foot in my mouth, and just,
Rising.
And rising.
trying to, for sure. I appreciate that.
Beautiful.
Any message you can leave our audience with? Any advice for someone who's trying to chase their dreams or goals?
If chasing your dream involves public speaking or putting yourself out there, NicoleDubéMedia.com.
Go.
Come find me on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on my website. Reach out. I would love to support anyone with any type of public speaking or media goals.
We may hit you up very shortly.
I honestly, I'm in awe of what you've created.
Thank you.
I've said it 10 times. It is not easy to achieve what you have, and I'm here because I wanted to just be a part of it. Thank you for letting me rise a little bit with you.
Hey, let's go.
Thank you, Nicole, so much for being here. Thank you guys for listening. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. And until next time, we'll see you. Peace.
Peace.
That's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
Yay!